What's up guys, Sirius here, and today I'm going to be talking about the different kinds of decks you're going to encounter in Hearthstone. This idea was brought to me by Matt Lowe from Blizzard Watch, linked to their website over there, and I encountered Matt on the Hearthstone In Facebook page, linked to that page over there. With that said, let's go ahead and roll footage. What's up guys, Sirius here, and I'm going to go ahead and go into a concept that a lot of people don't understand when they first start Hearthstone, and I figure it might actually help you out a bit. These are the different types of decks that you will encounter in the game, and I'll give you a brief overview of each deck and show an example of each deck, and maybe that'll help people out, and then I'll do I might do a few games with them in another video, not in this one because I really want to keep it short. So let's start off with Tempo. Tempo, you want to build the best value minions and minions that buff other minions so that you can make efficient trades. So one example of a Tempo deck is my Value Shaman deck, and with the exception of Cairn Bloodhoof, which is turning into Sylvanas Windrunner because I think Sylvanas is just better in that slot, you have a good 1-drop that can trade with multiple minions. Your main 2-drop minion comes out, and when it dies it makes more minions to do more trades. Harvest Golem, when it dies, it drops a body. It can do more trades. Your Fireguard Destroyer has a huge health pool. It can trade with multiple minions, usually. You have Gnomish Inventor and Azure Drake, cards that replace themselves when they come out. Same with Blood Mage Thalanos. You have Sludge Belcher and Piloted Shredder. They drop bodies when they die. In Sludge Belcher, it protects you, and in the case of Piloted Shredder, it allows you to maintain board advantage, maintain tempo. The difference between Tempo and something like Control is that Control doesn't care about its own board presence, it just cares that you have nothing. Tempo, you can have things. As long as Tempo is just a small step ahead of you in every single stage of the game, Tempo is fine and it will win. And then, Obvious, Dr. Boom, Dr. Obvious, Balanced, he's there. Neptulon, he comes out and he gives you 4 cards in your hand. So if you fall behind in this deck, if you fall behind in a Tempo deck, you have to have a way to come back ahead. Rogue uses Sprint to do that. Warrior, if you were to build a Tempo type Warrior deck, you have Battle Rage that gives you all those cards back. It lets you step back into a position where you can maintain Tempo. But the next type of deck is Aggro. These decks mainly go to face, use a lot of charge minions, use a lot of low-cost minions. They want to win the game quickly. An example of that, I'm not going to use Face Hunter as an example. Everybody has fought Face Hunter, I assume, and they know exactly how that deck operates. It just hits you repeatedly. So let's use something else. Demon Lock. Demon Lock is Zoolock with a little more late-game presence than Zoolock normally has. You have early-game minions in the form of Nerubian Eggs and Imp Gang Boss, and you have cards that will make them go for face stronger, like Abusive Sergeant and Ironbeak Owl to clear out taunts, Dark Bomb to clear out minions that are on the board, Mortal Cow to clear out minions on the board. You want to make sure that you're trading the cards in your hand for the cards on the board, but the creatures you have on the board are going into the opponent's face. Implosion. Kill a thing on the board, get board presence. Use that board presence to swing into the opponent. Everybody's encountered Knife Juggler and Face Hunter, dropping Knife Juggler, using Unleash the Hounds, pulling out all the Hounds, doing damage to multiple things to get rid of threats on the board, and then the Hounds either clear the rest of the board out, then go for face, or they just all go for your face. Implosion works under the same pretense. Things like Shadow Flame, again, get rid of the opponent's board with cards without sacrificing a lot of your board presence. Void Caller, if it dies, it puts another demon from your hand out, and the only demons this deck runs are a fucking charge minion, a minion that gets bigger the longer your opponent lets it sit on the board, and I'm not going to lose the game anytime soon, Mal'Ganis. So, this type of deck wants to make sure that your opponent is constantly dropping in health. It wants to make sure that your opponent is constantly pressured. In early ranks, this can cause your opponents to make a lot of fatal mistakes. Usually about rank 10 and higher, these mistakes aren't seen as often because players know how to fight this type of deck, but the reason this deck powers this type of deck, this Face Hunter Zoolock, The reason that these power through ranks early is because by maintaining constant life pressure, you force your opponent into thinking that that life actually matters, and they start making decisions based on their life, not based on the board. So it's good for that. Outside of that, though, it can pressure people no matter what level of player you are. You can be forced to summon on turn 5. I could be forced to drop a Sludge Belcher down when it would have been more... It would have been better for me in another situation to drop a Zerdrake and get some hand advantage and then maybe combo off and clear your board out, but I might not get that choice if I'm fighting a face deck. But that's enough about face decks. They're fairly simple. I don't know why I went into them as long as I did. The next type is combo. You have 2 or more cards that combo for insane damage or insane board presence that your opponent can't come back from. A good example of this is a Druid deck dropping Force of Nature and Savage Roar on you, or a Shaman dropping Alakir and using Rockbiter Weapon on you, or Doomhammer and Rockbiter Weapon. These are combos that do lots of damage or put out board presence that you can't deal with. The example of board presence you can't deal with is the most popular deck in the format, this thing, which I'm sure everybody has fought at least once or twice. I don't know why I'm getting a call from Oxford, Minnesota. But this is Grim Patron Warrior. And Grim Patron Warrior has one win condition. It can win other ways, but it has one main win condition. And that win condition is use Grim Patron to set off multiple combos. So your deck is built around deal 1 damage to Grim Patron, make it bigger, and then make it hit harder. Unstable Ghoul, protect the Grim Patron, and when your opponent kills it, it will trigger, and it will set Grim Patron off and set your combo off. Death's Bite. Kill a thing on the board, probably a taunt minion, and then use the AoE to set Grim Patron off. And Sludge Belcher being one of the most popular taunters in the game, Death's Bite hits Sludge Belcher, makes it take 1 damage from the Death Bite Death Rattle, so it kills it, summons the little one, and then you swing into the little one with Sludge Belcher, or you swing into the little one with another Grim Patron, and that Grim Patron doubles as well, and you get 3 Grim Patrons for just swinging with your Death Bite once, because your opponent played what in most circumstances would have been a very prime and opportune card to defend against you. Emperor Thaurissan, make the combo go off faster, and I personally like running Ragnaros in it because it's a little bit more of an assurance to make sure that I can win the game. I don't actually own a Grom Hellscream, so I mean there's my best charge minion for that section of the game. But their key card is actually not Grim Patron, their key card is Warsong Commander. Warsong Commander ensures that since this deck is so reliant on this combo, that it can actually use the combo and win the game. Otherwise, you would just be set with a huge board, which if you're fighting Paladin or Druid, you usually win because they don't have inherent answers without amplifying spell damage to deal with that kind of field. But Warsong Commander ensures that you can win the game before that becomes a problem, even if you are fighting a deck like Priest that can just light bomb it all out and then say, okay, now that the field's clear, I'm going to continue playing my game. So that's an example of a combo deck. Another example is Tinker Sharpsword Oil. It actually has a very similar curve. It's mainly worried about using a low-cost combo to win the game. Just like with Grim Patron, it has options to kill things on the board. It has options to do this, but it's mainly wanting to beat you with the combo of Tinker Sharpsword Oil and something that previously existed on the field. So it can do a lot of massive damage. So just like how Grim Patron Warrior wants to make a giant field that then swings into your face, Tinker Oil wants to make sure that it has a combo that does about 20-ish damage, and it hopes and prays that it has done about 15 to 20 damage previously to ensure that this is always going to be lethal damage. But those are 2 examples of combo decks, and they're 2 that people have probably seen a lot of. Tinker was really popular before Blackrock Mountain released, and Patron Warrior is really popular right now. So combo's in right now. Control. You want to take a slower game with control. You want to control the board, negate or remove enemy minions, and then win in the late game. So, unlike Tempo, that wants to play a good minion every turn, and use those minions to make good trades, and control the board that way, Control is going to use cards to control the board, like a face deck would, but instead of using early game minions like a face deck would while controlling the board with spells, this type of deck is going to actually go into the late game and is going to beat the opponent in the late game after crippling their early game. So the same concept, but little different. An example of a controlled deck is Control Warrior. And again, I don't have a Grom Hellscream, so for me, I'm actually testing out Majordomo and stuff in it because you can get enough armor to where when you turn into Ragnaros, you don't die instantly by having just 8 life. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is that it's a control deck, and I'll go into why. You have things like Execute, just like Patron Warrior does, clear things off the board, Revenge, Fiery War Axe, more board control. But see, the difference here is that you run things like Shield Block, get me into the late game faster, Big Game Hunter. I know that I'm not going to beat you on turn 5 and 6 with a massive combo, so instead I'm going to have to rely on a card to clear out things you're going to get that late. You still run Grim Patron, because at the end of the day, you still have this card that is amazing for your class and has tons of synergy with it. So I would still run Grim Patron in that kind of deck, but I would run a lot more late game stuff. Shield Maiden, get me into the late game. Sylvanas, I can steal whatever you have on the board. Because you're running Control Warrior, you know that you will be able to dictate what is on their board. Sylvanas is going to be able to take the creature that you want versus the creature that your opponent has left. And again, instead of running the combo pieces that the Grim Patron build runs, it runs late game pieces like Dr. Boom, Ragnaros, Nefarian, stuff that if I had it, I would be using Grommash Hellscream and Ysera as well. Stuff that when it comes into the late game and you drop it onto the board, your opponent is going to be super pressured to deal with this stuff, and they're not going to have the tools to deal with it because you have already been dealing with all of their stuff all game. You have crippled them throughout the game, so by the time turn 8 comes down, they are exhausted, and you're dropping legendaries. And that's generally how you're going to run most controlled decks. Shaman and Mage can run control as well, but they're a bit more difficult because they don't have a late game synergy that Warrior has. Priest and Priest control as well. Priest and Warrior have the ability to push themselves into the late game and survive up until the late game, so you're going to see them run more control. Whereas, yes, Shaman and Mage have a lot of similar control spells. They have AoEs, they have minions that can blow shit up on the board. They can play the control game, but they can't guarantee that they'll be alive on turn 8, or at least in a position of power on turn 8. Warrior and Priest can. They can guarantee that they will have at least 20 to 30 life to play with when turn 8 and 9 come around and they start dropping down giant minions. And the, let's see, what else do we have? We have Midrange. So, Midrange is a type of deck that wants to guarantee, kind of like Tempo, that it's going to have a play every turn. The difference between Midrange and Tempo is it's not worried about controlling the board so much as it's worried about just making the best play it can on any given turn. So let's look at Midrange Shami. It's going to look a little bit like Value Shami with a few differences. So your early game, you still have Zombie Chow, but I'm more concerned with having an effective turn 1 than a reactive turn 1. Tempo is fine having a reactive turn 1. Midrange is not. Midrange wants to make the play the opponent has to respond to versus responding to the opponent's play. So you're going to drop, you know, Zombie Chow down on turn 1 if you mulligan into it properly. Turn 2, I have Bloodmage Thalanos, Annoyatron, Haunted Creeper, all minions that if I drop them down on turn 2, there's not a single one of them that I'm going to be sad when my opponent hits it. The Annoyatron will protect me, the Haunted Creeper will multiply, the Bloodmage Thalanos will give me a draw. You go into turn 3. Turn 3, there's not a lot of really good minions for Shaman, so I left turn 3 up to reactive cards. Power Mace, clear a thing off the board. Hex, make sure your opponent's creature that they have is going to be gone. Generally speaking, your turn 3, you'll probably be dropping a totem. You won't have the ability to play a card that has value on turn 3 unless you draw into your Power Mace. Turn 4. Turn 4 is when you start having a lot of power. In all mid-game decks, in all mid-range decks, turn 4 is your power point. You should be able to bring out good cards on turn 4. Or turn 5. So I've got Fireguard Destroyer, Piloted Shredder, Sen'jin Shieldmaster, all some of the best creatures in the 4-mana slot. These are cards that are going to guarantee that when I hit this point in the game, I'm going to have an effective turn 4 that my opponent has to react to. Turn 5, Azure Drake, Sludge Belcher, again, some of the most effective minions for their mana cost. Turn 6, Fire Elemental, Fire Elemental Sylvanas Windrunner, not Sludge Sylvanas Windrunner. Again, some of the most effective minions in the 6-mana slot that your hero has access to, because obviously I can't be like, oh yeah, I'm going to drop Tyrian Forgeling. I mean, I could totally do it with no, Nefarian can't even take Tyrian Forgeling. He takes only spells. So no, as a Shami, I cannot make everybody have faith in the light. But anyway, my turn 6, I want to guarantee that I have a good play turn 6. My turn 7, Neptulon, Dr. Boom, 2 of the best turn 7 cards, one of which gives you immediate board presence and one of which gives you immediate hand presence. Turn 8, Alakir, not one of the best turn 8 plays, but hopefully I have managed to make good trades up until this point. And again, unlike Tempo, I'm not trying to make trades with my opponent, I'm trying to force my opponent to make trades with me. I'm making the good minions, not the value minions. My opponent has to respond to all of them. That's the only... I don't have the cards to make mid-range Paladin. I don't have Quartermasters and Tyrian, so I'm not really comfortable doing that right now. So I would show you an example of that, but I don't have it, so I can't. Now, and I'm sorry for using so many guys, but now, the last type of deck that I really want to get into, Gimmick decks. These are not to be confused with combo decks. These are decks that instead of winning the base way that the game is programmed, instead of winning that way, this type of deck aims to exploit the game and use... Oh, wow, it's thundering out there. But use the game's inherent mechanics against the player instead of playing what most people would consider a legitimate game. The most common examples are Fatigue Priest, for people who've fought that before, where it just heals and heals and heals and heals and heals until the opponent is out of cards, and then they lose to Fatigue. You have Mill Druid, which was very popular a while ago, and now we have the ability to play Mill Rogue. And I have an example of Mill Rogue, and I have aptly titled it, Don't Play, Still Win. So you have Backstab, Preparation, Shadow Step, Deadly Poison, Eviscerate, Gang Up. Now, here's where the gimmick starts. Everything else before, pretty common rogue stuff, except maybe Shadow Step. But once you get to Gang Up, that's when the gimmick starts happening. Shuffle 3 copies of a minion into your deck. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward, but what's the most effective minion we could put into our deck? A lot of people would argue that, oh, you could put in multiple Edwin Van Cleefs into your deck, for instance, and then have really strong cards when they come out. And that's fine. But what Gang Up has mostly been used for is the gimmick that is Cold Light Oracle, the same card that allowed Druid Mill to exist in the first place. Battlecry, each player draws 2 cards. Well, Rogue has a shit ton of good, efficient, low-cost cards. So Rogue is guaranteed, if they're always drawing cards, that they're going to make it into the turn 8 and the turn 9 plays. They're going to make it to this point in the game. The difference is, this deck isn't going to combo your opponent down in turn 8 and 9. It's just going to let you kill yourself in turn 8 and 9. What are the tools you have to make this gimmick work? Is the other part of a gimmick deck. You have a gimmick now. I have the ability to make my opponent draw until they die. How am I going to make this effective? You put in stuff like Earthen Ring Farseer and Antique Healbot, a la the same strategy Handlock employs. Handlock is very much a gimmick deck, but Handlock is an effective gimmick deck that wins legitimately, as opposed to just being gimmicky and winning off of an exploitive mechanic. But we take the same strategy that they use. We have healers within the deck to allow us to get to the point where we can exploit the game. You have an insurance factor in a gimmick deck, because you know you're not always going to win with your gimmick. So you put in an insurance factor like Tinker Sharpsword Oil. But ultimately, the goal is make your opponent draw multiple cards until they are out of cards in their deck, and then let them die to fatigue. Fatigue, they take a damage when they draw a card, then they take 2, then they take 3. Cold Light Oracle can actually trigger this. It can make them draw 2 fatigue cards at once, so keep that in mind. You use Gang Up to put Cold Light Oracle back in your deck, because, let's be honest, Cold Light Oracle's great. It does its job just fine, but you can't rely on it to be there all the time, especially after you've played one and there's only going to be one sitting in your deck. So you play Gang Up on it, put multiple copies in your deck, now you're guaranteed to draw more. A lot of people like to use the 3-cost sword in this deck. What is it? What's it called? I find it Dancing Swords, Death Rattle. Your opponent draws a card. I personally opted to have something like Piloted Shredder because even though I like the deck as a gimmick deck, I still want insurance factors. I still want good cards to make it run. But play it the way you want. Play it however you want. Ultimately, all that you need to make a gimmick deck function is just abuse an inherent game mechanic. And fatigue is an inherent game mechanic we can abuse. So with that said, if there's any other topic you guys would like me to cover in this tips and tutorial section, go ahead and say it in the comments below, and make sure to like and subscribe if you like my content and you want to see more. This is Sirs from Top Tier Scrubs, signing out. Hey guys, welcome to the end of the video, and if you liked what you saw, then you should totally hit the subscribe button. It really helps out a lot, actually. And if you want to see more of my content, click on the video and see my opinions on my favorite class.